Hello! Today we are here to discuss Galileo Galilei. This is the latest from Capstone Games, and just got it in, I think, last week. So before we get into the discussion, make sure
he was biting at the bit to get this played.
Well, yeah, it's a Capstone game. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell down there because you want to follow along in all of our discoveries from space or in the game world.
That's one way to put it, yeah.
Yeah,
Sure. Okay.
All right, so we haven't got Miranda back at the table yet for the reviews. She's playing games, she's talking,
Yep.
She has one less thyroid, but,
But she's
doing very well.
Yeah,
so,
she's doing great.
But she didn't feel comfortable being on camera with the scars right now, so...
Right.
But just for all those people who were concerned, she's doing very well. Rob, what can you tell us about Galileo Galilei?
So, 2024 release. Overall rank is 2,315 with a rating of 7.6. It plays 1 to 4 people and it about 1 to 2 hours, which is definitely accurate on that, maybe a little bit longer. It's for ages 12 and up, which I think is also accurate. There's a little bit of meat to this game. Designed by Thomas Hollick, I apologize if I didn't pronounce that correctly, and Michael Pachel. Published by Capstone, as Randy said. Now the MSRP is $59.99. Prices all over the place if you go online. So eBay had a copy for 31 bucks. Noble Knight had a copy for $40.50, but Geek Market had a copy for $65. That one, though, might be worth it because it's got a promo and everything's sleeved.
Oh, this had the promo, too.
Oh, did it? So, but with sleeves, too. So that might not too bad of a deal for you. But there you go.
All right, so let's talk about what you get in the box. So you get a lot of these dice that are just standard red, yellow, and blue. They have numbers on them from 1 to 6, as you would expect. Not following the rule of 7, though. This bothered me a lot.
Yes,
they are colorblind friendly to a point. They put dots on different sides based upon what color. So yellow has it on the right, red has it on the left, blue has it on the bottom. And the thing is you're going to combine those colors to make color combinations. And at first we're like, well, what's the point of making colorblind friendly dice if you're going to have them not that way on the card? But they did put little tiny white semicircles at the vertices on the die. So if you look very closely and you knew to look there, you would be able to say, okay, this one is a combination of the left and the right die, which is red and yellow.
So if you're really in dire straits where you may not be able to see all colors and you can't see very close up, you're screwed either way.
Yeah. So, but they tried. It's functional.
Yeah.
But it's a little minimal.
But I do appreciate that they tried doing
They did try, yeah, because you're doing a lot of color combining in this game. So the fact that they tried to come up with a solution that was not going to take up a lot of space on the card.
And then taking them into consideration was very, very polite. I guess, so.
You get a...
the player boards are pretty nice.
You have to do some... They have like the little two-sided glue tabs that you put inside. But they work really well. The only thing I don't like is the telescope is supposed to stay in a specific position, but clearly it spins too easily. So it's not supposed to be a spinner, it's just you're incrementing it up, so you could easily bump that. As far as, it's well laid out, I think. It's
very, very, very functional.
Yeah, it's not inlaid, though.
Yeah.
So, like, your dice just sit on little squares that are drawn on there. They don't go down. They could have cut those out easily and made it...
Well, especially since it's already folded over.
Yeah,
so.
And made it where it was inlaid for those dice. I'm not sure why they didn't. It does have kind of the turn order stuff printed at the bottom, but it's also on a cheat sheet, which we'll talk about it during the rules. You get these little meeples that are
cardboard.
A lot of cardboard. The Inquisition, but I think they look like Coke bottles to me. So
definitely, they don't look like Inquisitors. They don't look like the artwork that they use for the Inquisitors. So.
Yeah, now I do like the little masks. They look like Inquisitor masks
for sure. Or they kind of looks like Axemen.
Yeah, exactly. They're executioners.
Executioners.
And then your arches kind of look like horseshoes more than they look like entranceways. So Yeah, or magnets. I guess it could be a magnet.
Cards, a little bit of a linen finish. Do they have a linen finish? No, no, they don't. They're pretty.
Yeah,
but they're matte.
No,
They're,
it's got a.
it's a matte finish, but they're not linen. But
No.
it's pretty decent cardstock.
Yeah, and they're tarot size. They're good size. And the only problem we had was they bow.
Right.
Well, if you were to sleeve them, that will solve that.
Yeah, and they do bow, but it's like if you do the art side up, it's not so bad. But if you do it the other way, which we'll talk about in the rolls, then I think it makes a difference.
Yeah, but you can kind of just do this and curl
Sure.
it, and it'll work pretty well. I didn't really have a lot of problems because you're going to create a bookshelf with them, and you're going to move books across that shelf. Right. And so you want them to lay flat, and they don't lay perfectly flat. You've got,
this very, very fancy first player telescope for your first player marker.
And then you've got wooden bits that everything has screen printing except for the Inquisitor Coke bottles. So I think all in all, it's above, definitely above like a base of 5 Catan.
Sure.
I'm not sure how much more. I'll probably go, because it does have a nice oversized scoreboard. I will probably go ahead and give it a 6.5, maybe.
See, I was thinking maybe 7, just because the board is nice.
Well, it does have a lot of screen printing.
You do have a lot of screen printing on the wood. The dice, even though Randy being Randy, rule 7, it's end of the world type thing.
Yeah.
That's not that big of a deal. They're just used for counters, basically. So I think I'm 7.
Okay. Yeah, I could see a 7. All right, so moving on to theme, this is it's a track game, so it could be almost anything, but there are aspects of this that do try to capture some of the history, because obviously by the way, we're in the middle of a storm, potential tornado, so you might hear thunder or wind or hail or any kind of possible plague upon the household could happen during this video.
But the worst stuff is past us. It's just the thunderstorm side of it.
Actually, no. There's a whole nother.
Oh, is there another?
Yeah,
okay,
another one coming through.
I didn't know
in
there
the
was
next
another
few
system
minutes.
coming through.
So yeah, you might see the roof come off the house during the video. That'd be
might be really exciting.
Yeah. It's got the theme. There's some nice art showing the different planets and different constellations and comets and such, and they use the Latin terminology, which I think is nice, fitting of the time period.
Sure.
The only thing that I think stands out as a strong theme, though, is the Inquisition part.
Right.
Because Galileo was arrested for talking about science and how it went against the religion, and he stood by it. Other than that, it's nice, iconography, nice art, but there's really nothing thematic about it, I don't think. Apparently someone disagrees because I said that in the thunder. I'll probably give this the theme because I do like the Inquisition portion a lot, and the art is pretty decent. I'll go ahead and give it a 7.
I think I'm a 7 too, because the art is really nice. So I like it quite a bit, and it's very varied. So I obviously took a lot of work to design the artwork for that. So I appreciate that. Yeah. So I'm a 7.
All right. So moving on to the rule book. So the rule book has a picture that matches the cover of the box, which is it's pretty generic cover on the box actually, but it does have the again the Latin terminology on here. Well, it's got a Jupiter. I don't know if that was, maybe it's not the Io. I'm not sure how many of the planets he actually named and the moons and such, but I know he discovered several, particularly with Jupiter. The book itself is 20 pages, I believe. Yeah, 20 pages long. It has...
But some of that would cover the solo play. And
yeah, it has basically a kind of just a section of cut components at the top, but they are numbered and pictured, which is good. It starts into the game setup. This actually is really easy to set up. That's the nice thing about it. Setup and takedown isn't too bad.
Right.
You've got then your player board set up, and then it shows you a first time play what to do as far as assembling the boards. It goes through kind of the turn order, which makes sense and that you can follow along easily on your card. These are really handy during the game.
But they only did 2 of them.
Yeah, they only did 2. I don't know what it is with companies doing that kind of stuff lately.
Yeah, they want you to share.
Yeah.
Sharing is caring.
The problem is, one person can be planning their turn and figure out, do I want to upgrade and what are my upgrades, because they're on the back, which is really handy.
They borrow the other one.
But the other players on the other side of the table are using it.
It's not allowed. Sorry.
So it's kind of a nuisance when they don't make one for each player. But it is
or you can buy 2 copies of the game.
I'm not going to buy 2 copies of the game to get 2 more sheets.
The other 2 sheets. Yeah, well, I mean you could.
You could, but that would be stupid.
I didn't say it was smart.
All right. So there's sidebars almost like the Aaliyah series games.
I noticed that,
and that's really nice. But in this one they don't do the sidebars being a shorthand of the rules.
Right.
This is where they give the examples.
But still.
Yeah, it follows along perfectly with what they're explaining on the other side, so it's very helpful. After that it goes through all the icons and kind of just walks through what they mean. And then it goes into the...
I think that is one nice part about the iconography. It's pretty intuitive, so it's pretty easy to read and understand what it's trying to get across, which makes gameplay a lot easier and smoother.
Yeah.
If you can get some people to hurry up and make a decision.
It didn't take that long.
It took very long.
And then it goes into the objectives. They've got a nice section. This would have been nice to have had on a cheat sheet, though, because we had to look at what each one was up. I mean, once you've played this several times, you'll probably know.
Sure. Especially since there's not a whole lot of options.
Right.
So...
But this could have been easily, because it's in the middle of the book. At least put it on the back of the book. That would have been nice, but they didn't do that. So if you want to know what your bonuses and objectives are during the game, you have to go to the page 11 and look them up. Once you've looked it up one time at the beginning of the game, you probably won't need to refer back to it. Then it goes through kind of the Inquisition portion, how that works whenever that occurs. And
Inquisition.
Yep. Now we gotta edit the video because you can't sing songs on this. Not you can't personally sing on.
Well, no, I really can't sing.
Yeah. Probably they'll never tell that was a copyrighted song anyway. All right, so then the end of game scoring is all in here. What to do if ties, typical stuff, and then you got the advanced mode. And the advanced mode in this is literally just
taking your player board and flipping it over.
Playing with variable player powers.
Which are not that complicated.
No, it's variable player powers. And then it goes into those variable player powers. It goes through and explains each character.
I mean, really, the most unique one was the one that Miranda played with Copernicus. But the rest of them are pretty simple.
Yeah, mine wasn't even in there because it was just literally 3 more storage spaces for things. The good news is they give you a history of each scientist, their birth and death year, and kind of what they did. Every scientist in here is like that, for whatever, except for Copernicus, of course, who's not in the book.
He didn't count.
Not Copernicus, Halley.
Haley's Comet.
Haley might be the expansion.
The promo.
Yeah, the promo. And then you've got the solo gameplay. It starts on page 16 and takes up the rest of the book. And then they have a blurb about each of the designers and
their
artists.
picture.
Yeah. So, it's well laid out. It's very easy to reference apart from that objectives being in the middle of the book.
And easy to read.
Yeah, there's no confusion. And the examples were perfect for it. These cheat sheets are really good. I'll probably go ahead and give it an 8.5.
Okay. I didn't read it.
Yeah. All right. But how long did it take me to explain it to you?
It wasn't very long at all.
No.
So.
All right.
And I didn't even go to sleep halfway through it.
No.
Which is kind of common.
So now moving on to gameplay. So first thing, you're going to start the game out. You're going to have 1 die of each color, red, yellow, blue, set to 1, which means you got 1 purchasing power with that die, if you will. You're going to have all of your tokens set to the light side, face up, and your telescope is going to start on the first position that doesn't have an X on it. There's 2 X's at the beginning of your path, and that's basically kind of a starting space for all these tiles.
But like thematically makes sense because your telescope is pointing towards the ground. So what good is that?
Yeah.
So,
Well, not quite the ground. You're
but
pointing
close enough, Randy.
to the sky. You're spying on your
looking
neighbor.
at trees and
You're
stuff.
spying on
Who
your neighbor
cares?
who's on the
It's not
third
the
floor.
stars. So I thought that was kind of clever that it's too low, so therefore it makes sense.
Yeah. So you're going, after that you're going to basically randomly distribute these tokens. You can put them, once you get familiar with the game, you can choose the order you put them in. But the thing is when you start using them, they're going to change order anyway. So it really doesn't matter a whole lot. And then you're going to start the game with a bunch of comets and a bunch of constellation tokens filling up all of your charts. I think there's 7 of each. And your Inquisition track is going to be empty. You'll have no cards up here because you have to acquire them during the game. You'll have one, everybody has the same as far as 4 icons, 1 space in your bookshelf.
And 4 books ready to go across.
Yes. So that's your starting position. So on your first turn, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to move your telescope 1, 2, or 3 positions up. So actually it starts on this first X. I misspoke. It's actually starting on the first X. So you could actually go to the first spot.
For the first 3.
So you can go up 1, 2, or 3 spaces. You're going to get to trigger 2 different actions. There's one permanently printed on the board, and then there's the one based upon these movable tiles.
Right, so kind of the outer and then the inner.
Yeah, and you can choose the sequence you would play them in, but you have to complete one before you do the other. You can't interrupt. So I can go to the first spot here. All right, so the first one lets me increase all of my red dice by 1, or I can move my book to the end of a path. At the beginning of the game, I'm probably going to do the upgrade my die to 1. So if I had a red 1 over here to start the game out, I would just flip it to a red 2.
And if you had 2 red die, you'd be able to flip them both.
Yep. And you've got 4 storage spaces, 4 dice. You can only have 3 of the same color. So you can store up to 4 dice, but only 3 of those same ones. So every die that is red would increment. Then I can trigger the telescope action. So the telescope action lets me use these dice to purchase cards or to discover constellations. The cost for the card is in the upper left side, and it's always going to be 2-tone colors. So it's like this one's green, so I would have to use some combination of blue and yellow dice. It doesn't have to be even split, but you have to use at least 1 blue and at least 1 yellow die to buy that card.
Right.
And then you get what's below it. So in this case, this is late in the games because these are super expensive at the beginning. This one is 11 green, so I would have to spend a total of 11 blue and yellow.
Between blue and yellow.
And I would get 10 victory points, and I get to move up an Inquisitor on my track, which we'll get to in a little bit. So that's the telescope action. Now, or the other action you can do is constellations.
And then when you use your dice, you actually spend the dice, so you lose them. So you don't have to do actions later on to get dice back.
Yes. And you don't make change. So if you had too much, you just wasted it.
Right.
And the constellations you can purchase on any of these cards. They don't have to be on the same one, but you can do it up to 2 times. Mm-hmm. So I could use 2 different dice if I wanted to spend on 2 different cards, assuming I had incremented them up sufficiently.
But they're usually less victory points. Sometimes you even get more Inquisitors.
But they do clear off your tokens down here, which can be advantageous because
there could be one of the scoring tracks. Yeah.
But also you get a bonus for when you play it. You get the victory points, you get a spot on the card that you played it on that you can choose to put your token, which may have an icon on it. Not always.
A bonus once you clear it off your board.
Yeah, and there's always a bonus on there.
Right.
So basically, you get kind of 3 times perks on it, but the victory points are a lot less. So it depends. Plus it doesn't extend your track, and there's some advantages to getting more cards before you start moving your books. Because there's some that let you just move immediately to the end of the track, and you get everything that you pass along the way. So that's kind of the telescope action. The next spot here has I can get another die, or I can move up one of these 4 university tracks. And the university tracks are multipliers towards in-game scoring based upon categories. There's 6 tokens that are randomly on there. You're going to have 2 that are kind of a instant bonus when you reach a certain threshold, and if you're the first to get it, you get 7 victory points. If you subsequently get one after someone else does, you get 3. So there's a 4-point bonus for getting it first, but other than that, it's basically the same. So the tracks down here for the other 4 are going to be, the other categories. There's never a duplicate. They always make sure that 2 of them are going to be at the top, and everything else will be different at the bottom because there's only 6 tokens.
Right.
So I like that, because sometimes you get the double bonus for going up a category, and it makes it hugely advantageous to go up that one thing. So I like how they made sure that didn't happen. So the tracks, there's 4 that are used each round, but there's 2 sides, and I believe there's 2 extra ones. So there's like 12 combinations you could get. Well, 12 different sides, but then any arrangement. Right. So you just shuffle them up. I shuffled and kind of flipped them, and then so the sides.
Which is a little bit more organized. He usually flings them up in the air.
Well, I probably did that a few times. I think one might be stuck up on the ceiling still. But yeah, it gives you a nice difference. It changes, and this time I think some of them were worse than the first time we played, because we got a lot more Inquisitors on there. It seemed like, which is actually a good and bad thing in the game. Then the next spot lets you play a comet. So there's your comet track. You just literally take the first one that's on here, put it at the top of the board.
On the one side.
On the one side, which is what's face up at the beginning of the game. So basically what that becomes is a discount, one-time use for buying a card or using buying a constellation.
It just reduces the cost.
Yeah, so once you use it, you can use as many of those tokens as you want on a turn, as long as it's always reducing a cost. You can't just spend them to be spending them.
Right. In other words, you have to use at least a 1 on a die.
Yeah.
So at a minimum.
And then when you use them, they're going to move down, flip over to 2s, and they go down here, and now you get 2 discounts.
On a different turn. You can't use a 1 and then flip it to a 2 and use it again.
Yeah, it has to be a different turn. And then once you've used them for the second time, they go down to this book down here at the bottom, and at the end of your turn, well, about halfway through your actions you get during the turn, you're going to book these into pages on the board, or in some cases, if you're doing the personal play.
I guess thematically, I guess you discovered the comet, and so now you're documenting
it. Right. And each one of those has a perk on it, and then if all of these fill up, there's an overflow chart where you just get a victory point. So you don't really want to get the overflow. As a matter of fact, you can't choose to take the overflow like late in the game, where you might not get any advantage from doing.
You still have to fill up.
You have to fill up before you can go to the appendix. So you're going to move down. You're going to choose it. Now I had 3 different slots that I could do my own personal book pages, which is my special ability. Miranda had 1. You had 1. So, that's just one of the variable abilities people have. After that, you've got another option to either acquire a card, or you can acquire a die. And then the last one lets you upgrade one of your tokens by flipping it over to the other side.
Which is the same ability, but better.
Those are the printed actions. Now, on the icons down below, you're going to have various things, most of which are going to be about gaining resources. So, incrementing your dice up by 1 or 2 positions.
And it could either be color specific or your choice, depending on which tile you use.
Yeah. Or gaining, I forget what you call these things, but they're triangles.
They're like protractors.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but they have them in the book, the name of them, but they look like little triangles. If you can acquire those, and you can use them as free actions. I mean, they're not free because you have to spend the token, But on
They
your
can be really useful.
yes, on your character board, they've got you can spend 1, 2, 3, or 4, and it tells you what you get for it, and you can use as many as you have. So there's no limit to the number.
The compasses or triangles or whatever you call them, they're really useful because it actually helps you get your Inquisitors at the end of the track much quicker, and that's a huge thing. So,
That's the one I save up all mine for. Is that?
oh, it's such a big deal.
3 cost.
Thankfully, it didn't cost. I mean, it took me a while to get there, but it's such a huge point difference if you don't do it right.
Going on to the Inquisitors, many of the cards that you acquire in particular, or
Most
the
of the
constellations,
cards,
a lot
I think.
of them are going to generate more Inquisitors. So when you get one, it starts automatically at the very beginning of your track. And if you don't do something about it, it's going to cost you 4 reputation, which this is the reputation track. You normally start at the -3 position. If you got -4 at the beginning, you're going to fall off the track and you're going to lose victory points right away.
And why that's a big deal is because even though putting them on the board doesn't do anything, there's a lot of actions that will make them move.
Yeah.
And as soon as you move them, then it basically scores them.
Yes.
And so if you have any in that negative section, then this track goes down.
Yeah.
And it goes down quickly.
Much quicker than it goes up.
It goes up. So that's where I learned the hard way early half the game that I went down all the way down to the -10 section. Thankfully, I didn't fall off the board.
Yeah.
Because if you do, you lose victory points immediately.
Right.
So I didn't do that, but it took me a while to build it back up. And Miranda scored quite a few points because she had hers maxed out, and every time she fell off the board in the other direction, she got 2 victory points.
Yeah, but you only get 2 victory points no matter how many times you bounce.
Yeah, but if she did that every round, and she did it a lot, she got quite a few points.
Yeah, so you're basically going to want to try to get these moved across as you score them, because you don't want to place a bunch and then score and end up having to panic and try to get them out of there, because it's easy to acquire them.
Very easy.
So you kind of have to manage. That's what the best part of this game, I think, is the management of those Inquisitors, because it balances, okay, I could just buy up all these cards and get 10, 15 victory points each time. That's great. But if I do, I'm going to get a whole bunch of Inquisitors in that negative side, and eventually they're going to get moved. Because any icons you cross over or land on, you have to trigger. So if you get one that moves them, you have to trigger it whether you want to or not.
Right.
So you have to spend time thinking, okay, if I do this and this, I will end up moving these up. I will lose more victory points than I would gain, so I can use my triangles to get rid of, move them up 2 more additional
And that was
spaces.
actually one of the goals, too, is getting 6 Inquisitors. And it doesn't care where you get them as long as you get to 6. Then if you're the first one to do it, you get 7 points.
Right. And it's a revolving goal. There's 2 that are pre-printed on the board that are about maxing tracks or about having done kind of a balance of getting rid of your constellation, your comets, and gaining 2 of the cards.
Right.
So the cards are, when you do acquire them, they're going to expand your library, which is one of the other things that can happen. Is you'll see a book icon, it may have a number on it which lets you move across and trigger as many spaces as it tells you, or it may have an arrow which lets you just max out that
and you get every spot that you pass through.
Right. So that is kind of my favorite part of the whole game. And then at the end of your turn, if you've managed to meet any of those one-time objectives, then you get to put a token down on that objective, and then
by far the biggest scoring opportunity though are the tracks.
Yeah.
So they're all modifiers based off of how well you did in the area that it looks at, whether it's getting books and how far along the book path you are, or like we got the number of technology or the upgrades that you did. We got the number of tokens that you used for your constellations and the number of cards that you got.
Yeah.
And what's important is the cards, because you have 2 sides of the cards. Yeah. We didn't explain that part.
Yeah, so when you actually acquire the card, you're going to get face up and you're going to place it down there.
And it's kind of like a black, the section's black, so you're able to be able to tell the difference.
Now, on the constellation track, there's 3 places where you'll gain a card. You can take it from the top of the deck, and you're
it's on
going
the
to add
tan side.
And
so it's a different color. You still get the nice stuff on the book track.
Yeah.
But you don't get any of the other stuff like the victory points.
Objectives.
Right.
So yeah, you don't they made it clear based on the color of the cards, so you can look and say, oh, I've got 4 that are black background, so there's 4 cards that match for the criteria. So yeah, that's very handy.
And that's how it speeds up the game, because the game ends when that stack of cards is gone.
Yeah. You play one more round after that, and then the final scoring.
Right.
Now, one thing we didn't mention is when you do use an action space, the token on there gets pulled off, pushed at the bottom, and everything pushes up. So that's how these tokens revolve, and that's why it doesn't really matter the sequence, because as you use them, they're going to change order.
And that very last one for the upgrade does not move.
It's pre-printed on the board.
It's permanently on there.
So as far as the in-game scoring on it, you basically score your tracks and you score your final positioning of your Inquisitors, and at the bottom it tells you how many victory points you gain or lose.
So yeah, not only would you lose points for here, but you lose points here too, based off of where you're at. So the Inquisition is pretty brutal if you don't pay attention to it.
Yeah, you definitely want to make sure you don't get behind on those Inquisitors.
Right.
So as far as my thoughts on the game, it's an easy game to teach. I like that. I don't think it has enough growth that it's going to last a long time. That's my concern. I think if an expansion comes out promptly, that's going to add on some more scoring capabilities in different areas, I think that'll help. But right now, I just think it's going to be limited because there's so few scoring tracks.
Right. Now, I agree, but at the same time, it's like most games, especially if you're in a group where you got some, really good players. First-time players are going to be at a disadvantage than people that played it multiple times, because it can be formulaic. I can see it being formulaic, where you can figure out, all right, just by seeing what scoring tracks you got, you know exactly where to go and what to do to be able to maximize the number of points. And then someone who's never played the game would not have a clue on that. And I really liked playing it, but clearly my lack of experience was a huge difference, because they outscored me by almost 100 points.
Well, it wasn't 100. It was about 50.
So I was at 82, and they were in the 130s. So well over 50 points.
Yeah, it's about.
But
50.
still, I mean, I really enjoyed it, but you could tell the difference. So I could see maybe a first-time player not maybe enjoying it if there was someone that's really experienced, unless they just want to play for the joy of the game, which is what I try to do my best to do that. So I did like it. I thought there was a little bit more meat than what you think that there is, because of that, maybe that disparity between the two of us, the experience between the two of us. But I really did like it, and I do agree. I think it's fairly easy enough to teach. I think that I wouldn't call it a light game by any stretch of the imagination, but that medium to medium heavy.
I don't think it's medium heavy. I think it's firmly in the medium side. It's definitely not. I mean, if it weren't for the look and the Latin and the appearance of it, I think this would just be purely light to medium. But given the fact that I think it's more complicated because of the theme than it is, the gameplay. Because, I mean, this one little card tells you how your turn plays. And it's all about maximizing points from those tracks, which there's so many track scoring games. If you've played one, you'll learn how to play it easy. The Inquisitors being the only exception to that rule.
So overall, what would you score?
I'm probably a 7.5 is where I'm at.
I mean, I think I can agree with that. Yeah, I think 7.5 is a good score. I think there's a good amount of meat. I think it's a little bit more complicated than what Randy thinks, but I think as I'm getting older, games are just not as easy for me as they used to be. So it feels a little bit more complicated to me, but but it wasn't too much so. So I think it was really satisfying with the amount of weight, and it felt good playing it. It was fun.
Yeah, Miranda, on the other hand, I don't think she liked it as well. Although
she might have liked it the second time.
I think she liked it
more
better the second time, because I think I blew her away the first game, and I think it's just because track games I tend to do better at. But she was convinced that because I got the first player draw that it changed everything, and I think she saw it differently this time because we gave her first player, and yet I still won. It was close, but
Yeah, he only won by 5 points or 4 points. So.
Yeah, so we were pretty much scoring the same points everywhere on the tracks.
Right.
So, I think there was, I outscored her on one, and she outscored me on another, but it netted back to being 4-point difference at the end. I think that she may have seen a different side of it.
Yeah.
This game with the 3 players, I don't know if she would recommend this at 2 because of what we experienced the first time, but honestly, I didn't think it played that much different with 2 than 3. Other than you have more competition for those tracks.
Sure.
So I think that because of that, that might be. I mean, when I say tracks in this case, I'm thinking the during game scoring.
The in-game scoring stuff, or not? It's during game scoring.
Yeah, during game scoring.
Yeah.
The tracks that you're independent anyway. It doesn't matter who gets up the top first. But yeah, the competition there. But honestly, it's a 7 to a 3 point. It's not like there's that much difference.
In close games, it would.
Yeah.
It would make a difference.
Oh, one thing we didn't bring up, there's the Inquisitor, there's 3 different symbols you can get with that. One has a plus, that means you get an Inquisitor and it has to start at the beginning. There's the arrow, which lets you advance it.
By one.
But then you'll occasionally get, much less frequently, but you occasionally get one that has a check mark. And that's one you get also whenever you complete one of those objectives. You can choose. I didn't do it, and I generally don't want to do it because I'm giving up bonus points. Is I can take one of my Inquisitors that had made it all the way across. It has to be all the way across. I can spend it. I will get another die at the 1 level, and I will get one of the triangles. So if I am desperately needing a die in a triangle, I might consider it, but I'm giving up that victory point and the offset of that reputation when I get one of these.
But I mean, I could see that maybe in game where maybe you have 6 or 7 and getting rid of a couple may not be that big of a deal, but getting that die could net you 10, 15 points.
Yeah.
So it'd be way more advantageous. But that would be an in-game move in my opinion because you're fairly comfortable. You're not worried about losing points.
Well, you're losing one.
Yeah. So it's not that big of a deal.
So, yeah. So that's our thoughts on Galileo Galilei. If you had a chance to play it, let us know what you think. Mm-hmm. Or if you just really like astronomy, let us know what you think about, space.
What do you think about the stars?
Yeah.
How pretty they are.
They're pretty.
They are pretty.
All right. So next time you keep shooting for the stars and we'll keep on gaming. Bye.